My name is Victoria. I'm going to be talking about nighttime thermal satisfaction and cooling strategies in New York City. So we are now in, well, I guess the end of winter now. But if you have been around New York City for a while, you will know that air conditioning is a very important piece of equipment to have in the summer. And even if you haven't been around New York City for a while, just by walking around, you will see that these, I guess there's no pointer, but oh, is this the? So these room air conditioning units, they're one of the most prominent features in the buildings in New York City, and indeed they're everywhere. So we know that with climate change that we can expect more hot days and more frequent and more intense heat waves. And this means that the need for air conditioning is going to increase as well, not just for comfort, but also for protection. And there are several studies from past heat waves. They actually found that having a functioning air conditioning unit in your home is a strong protective factor against heat-related illness and mortality. And this is also why one of the most commonly provided heat protection advice to the general public always involves some variation of staying in air-conditioned rooms. For example, in this 2010 meta-study, the authors, they surveyed around the globe for 44 governmental organizations and weather service agencies, and they found these were the top 13 commonly provided heat protections, and number 4 and number 5, they were air conditioning related. So this is what's good about air conditioning. What about the bad? Obviously, the audience in this room, we know that air conditioning is not a good long-term solution if it can even be termed as a good short-term solution. No less because it actually contributes to the bigger problem of climate change by expelling condensing heat into the air, which basically contributes to the warming environment, especially in dense urban area like in New York City, contributes to urban heat island effect. And also because air conditioning requires electricity, it is susceptible to and often cause blackouts on hot days when it overcapacitate the grid and we experience grid failure. So basically, when you need the air conditioning the most, you might not be able to have it. A lot of people might not be able to have it. And also, it is energy intensive. Obviously, the energy efficiency is improving every year, but even in 2014, that air conditioning is the top source of US residential electricity consumption. You can see on the top here. So obviously we have a dilemma here. On one hand, that we know that we will be needing more air conditioning for comfort and for protection, but on the other hand, that we know that is not a sustainable solution. But it is not something that we can do away with. Even in 2009, there 87% of the US households are equipped with AC, and that data is from a couple years ago. So obviously there's much research into the energy efficiency and environmental impact of air conditioning, but what we're lacking is that there's actually very little documentation on how people use air conditioning, the usage pattern in a residential setting. So knowing how people are actually using air conditioning and the factors that drive their thermal preferences and what perpetuates their behavior, obviously, is very important from an energy perspective. But it is also important for health and well-being because, for example, in a dense urban area like New York City, that most people actually spend their time indoors, and a majority of that time indoors is actually spent at home. So it is really important that we know that what people are actually doing to stay cool and why they decide the choices they made. So to gain a better understanding, we conducted a questionnaire survey study at the end of summer last year in 2015 to gain a better understanding of the nighttime thermal satisfaction and the various heat coping strategies. So we focus on the bedroom environment because that is one specific indoor space where the vast majority of people routinely spend about a third of their day in this space. And also because, for example, in New York City, that which is a dense urban area, suffers from urban heat island effect, which is characterized by a warmer nighttime temperature. And most of the time that when you spend at home is actually spent at night. And finally, that several epidemiological studies have speculated that the health impact of heat stress is actually due to the lack of nighttime relief from daytime heat. So the nighttime heat stress is actually of particular interest. And so this questionnaire survey study is part of a larger project that I'm running on bedroom environmental conditions and sleep quality. But for this presentation, since it is so short, I'm just going to be focusing on thermal satisfaction and its linkages to how people use air conditioning. And just to clarify, thermal satisfaction basically just means how satisfied you are regarding how cool and how hot your environment is. Oh. So the design of our questionnaire survey study is quite simple. It's an online anonymous questionnaire survey. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. It consists of around 50 to 90 questions. There's good logic in there, so it depends on how you answer certain questions. You might get more questions. And our targeted respondents is basically the general adult population, 18 plus. They have to live in New York City, and they have been here in 2015 summer. They also speak good English, so they would not misinterpret the language inside in the questionnaire. And so we reach these potential respondents through a research firm who sent out over 25,000 invitations to the general New York population. And all in all, we collected 706 valid responses. And we matched the New York general population by gender and age group. But because of resource limitations, we are not able to match on all aspects of the general New York population. So for example, our sample in general is more affluent than the typical New York population, and it's also more educated, and it's unfortunately less racially diverse. But all in all, it's still a pretty good sample. So before I dive into the various coping usage pattern of air conditioning, I just want to point out that our survey allows us the data to get a closer look at the time spent at home and time spent in the bedroom. So we asked respondents during a typical weekday, so not on the weekends, how many hours they spend at home. And the medium is 14 hours. And how many hours they spend at home during the night between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., that's 10 hours. And how many hours they spend in the bedroom, that's also around 10 hours. So which kind of bolster our assumption that bedroom environment is actually quite important, because that's where we spend a lot of time in. So this graph shows the most commonly used heat coping strategies. In our questionnaire survey, we allow the respondents to choose multiple as many strategies as they have used last summer. They are also allowed to write in their strategies, but these are the top strategies. And as you can see here, that this very large bar here is using AC for cooling. And the various coloration is the brown represents the people who only use, this is the only strategy they use, and the red portion represent the first choice of 2 or more strategies used. So basically, even though last summer, if you were here last summer was actually quite mild, so it wasn't very hot, but still, vast majority, actually basically 73% of our respondents used AC for cooling last summer, and 30% actually air conditioning is the only strategy they use, even though it wasn't very hot at all. So basically ensure that even though last summer was not especially brutal, people still turn to air conditioning for cooling. And a far second is actually using fan for cooling, and opening windows is actually 4th place here. So in addition to just asking people what strategies they used, we also asked people why they used or why they did not use certain things. So this is the list of reasons people list for not having an AC. And we also asked people who are using AC if there's any downside to using AC. And this is their list. So as you can see that whether you had AC or you did not have AC, that the cost, basically the financial cost to running AC is a very important concern for both people who didn't have AC and people who are using AC. And something that I thought was very interesting is that the environmental impact of air conditioning is actually relatively low on people's priority list, or in terms of whether they decide to use AC or not. Something else interesting is also that normally when we think about using AC, we think about energy concerns and whether it's cool or not, but there's also other practical concerns as well. For example, in New York City, and especially in Manhattan, that most people in their bedrooms, they probably only have one window. So if you're going to have a window unit, and once you install the air conditioning unit, you actually basically render your window useless. You cannot open it, and it also blocks out light. So people do complain about not having fresh air. So all in all, that we found that 15% of our respondents did not have air conditioning installed in their bedroom, and 7% did not have AC installed at all in their homes, which is slightly lower than 11%, which was found by the 2014 New York Housing Vacancy Survey, which is, so this discrepancy is kind of expected because our respondents are slightly more affluent than the general New York population. And so in terms of the different air conditioning types, we found the overwhelmingly window or wall unit is the most popular type, as opposed to central. Only about a quarter of our respondents have central air conditioning. So why is this important? So first of all, window or wall unit, usually they're known as room air conditioning units. They are known to be less energy efficient than central air conditioning system. And also when you think about it, you are basically creating a hole in your wall or through the window that also creates other problems, for example, like infiltration, which could also become problematic in the winter. And secondly, that window and wall unit, they might be less protective than central air conditioning system. Some epidemiological studies found that having just room air conditioning is actually not substantially more protective than not having air conditioning at all. So the protective factor they found is actually more related to having central conditioning. So, and then next we look at the mode of using air conditioning. So roughly 70% of the people who use AC can set their air conditioning to a specific temperature. That means the rest of them actually cannot. They usually, they describe that their AC can either be turned on or off, or they have some sort of abstract scale, like from low, medium, high, or 1 to 6. And for those people who can set their AC to a specific temperature, the medium we found is 70 degree Fahrenheit, which is actually very low. So as a reference, in New York City, your landlord is by law to turn on the heat to maintain indoor temperature at 68 degrees when the outside falls below 55. So there's only 2 degrees difference between when you're using your AC and you want to turn on heating. So this is actually quite low. And 40% of the AC users, they say they always or frequently use the energy saver mode. But 30% of the air conditioning users, they say their AC actually does not have this function at all. And next we look at the frequency of use. So about a quarter of the AC users, they use AC almost, basically every night last summer, even though it wasn't very hot. Another quarter, about 80 to 90%. And so when these people are using ACs, they actually kept the AC basically for at least 8 hours, basically all night long. So all that is well and good, so now we have a better idea of how people are using AC in New York City. But the bigger question is, how does that affect their thermal satisfaction? So overall, we actually find that almost half of the respondents are actually quite satisfied, or very satisfied with their bedroom thermal environment at night, possibly because last summer was not very hot to begin with. But what we want to know if is if the usage pattern of air conditioning has any effect on the satisfaction. So here is a comparison. The darker shades means dissatisfied all the way to satisfied. And as you can see, there is a big difference between people who use AC, just regardless of the frequency and the length, just they have used AC in the bedroom, versus people who did not use or did not have air conditioning in the bedroom. And this difference is significant, and the effect is medium small at 0.27. And then we look at whether the type of air conditioning makes a difference in terms of people's thermal satisfaction. And again, it is significant, but the significance is between window and central system. And this is partially in line with what the epidemiological studies found, that is possibly that the room air conditioning units just do not work as well. And then we look at whether you use energy saver makes a difference in terms of your thermal satisfaction, and it does not. And then we look at the frequency of use, how that affects your satisfaction. And as expected, that obviously the more you use it, the more satisfied you are with your bedroom environment, and this difference is significant. But the biggest difference is between people who use it every night and people who use it very little. And the effect is, again, from small to medium. So we're not talking about a big effect here. So finally, so all of those is actually not earth-shattering. It's not that surprising. But what is slightly surprising is that we actually did not find any significant difference between the people who use air conditioning at different lengths. So basically, that whether you use AC or not has an effect on your thermal satisfaction, but how long you use it does not matter. Neither does the temperature you set it at. So what does that mean? So basically, we found that using air conditioning is associated with a higher level of thermal satisfaction in the bedroom at night, specifically when you use it more frequently throughout the summer. But running it longer or at lower temperature does not improve the satisfaction. So the implication of this that could be the general public may not be using the AC efficiently and not smartly. And this means that there could be opportunity for user education and as I pointed out earlier, that some ACs, they don't even have a thermostat, that you don't even know what temperature you're setting at. So there could be improvement there as well. And finally, that even though our sample is slightly more affluent than the general New York population, that the cost of running AC is still a priority concern. And obviously, this is going to be a much harder problem for people in lower income communities. So the next steps. So what I presented here today is actually only a fraction of the data that we collected from this survey. And the next step would be to kind of explore the usage patterns of other cooling strategies, including electric fan and window operations, and linking that to sleep quality and health. So acknowledgements to Earth Institute and to NIH T32 training grant, and my collaborators, Jeff Shaman and Patrick Kinney at Mailman School of Public Health. And special thanks to John Kosnick, who took a look at the survey questions. Thank you.
Questions? Questions?
Hi, thanks, Victoria. I was interested in when you said that the use of air conditioning could exacerbate the urban heat island effect locally. Do you have any idea if there's been any research on how strong that effect could be?
There is a couple research on there. By far, it's not like the most well studied. Yeah, but I think there's a few that have found that they do increase the microclimate in the urban environment.
Is it a significant effect, you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know how many degrees, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Just a curiosity question. To send out the 25,000 invitations, you went to a research firm and instructed them for New York City residents, 25,000 random sample?
Yes, so the 25,000, it was not determined by me. It was, so when you sort of engage a research firm, that you told them the population you're targeting, and they would try to meet your criteria.
And do you know offhand what the cost was of reaching out to them? And was there any incentive given to a positive response? And is 700 responses out of 25,000 deemed to be typical?
I don't know how typical it is, because I personally validated all the responses, so that's why the fraction seems so small, that out of 25,000. First of all, because a lot of people got screened out. For example, if they click on it and they're not 18 or over, then they are sent, the survey will immediately end. But the price, because I was targeting the general New York population, which is not very difficult. For example, I'm not looking for people of very narrow age range or specific, like they only drink certain kind of beer or anything like that.
Right.
So the cost is, I think, is about $6 to $7 per validated response. Okay. So it's affordable, and this is actually something that I did not know before, that I felt I actually have to target like whole bunch of mailing lists inside Columbia. But I was informed of this. This is actually very frequently used in survey studies, and they can ensure you have a more randomized sample. Obviously, it's not perfect as I presented, but it is so much better than if I just email a whole bunch of Colombian years to people. Yeah.
Very interesting. Good, thanks.